welcome. Thanks for coming. My name's George Moskoff. I'm an app developer, consultant, social entrepreneur, so I've done a bunch of different things. The real driver of this session today is going to be how to prepare for creating an app, how to get your feet planted so that you don't spend a lot of money and do something that's not going to have value out in the marketplace. So here's what we're going to get done today. We're going to talk about different ways that you can design your app, because preparation is going to be the crux of creating an app that has market value and also comes in on budget. We're going to talk about prototyping and different ways for doing that, because that's going to save a lot of money, and it's also going to give you, it's going to help you crystallize how the app is going to work. We're going to talk about testing without spending a dime on programmers, because there are programs out there that do that. And the typical price for developing an app in the US today is probably around $25,000. If you go offshore, you can reduce that cost. But a lot of what's going on today, even when they're pricing it at $25,000 here in the US, they're doing a lot of offshore work as well. And the reason for this, the reason I think this has some value, and I think the preparation has value, is we see a lot of apps that are not so fresh. So this one, it comes from Amgen. Anybody want to guess when they last updated that? Here's another one. This is a diabetes app, and that was June of 2011. So this is over 2 years ago. So the thing's sitting on the shelf. And you can go through the store and find all sorts of these. Here's the last one from Medtronic. And that was January of 2012.
Does it matter that it's not so fresh if they're still serving a purpose?
Yes, it does. Because if you're going to, people want what's new. And you have to keep the app moving along. You have to, especially when the new operating systems come out. One of my apps, we had to change a whole bunch of things around when the new OS came out, because all of the icons have changed. So here's how we're going to spend our time together. I'm going to do about 30 minutes, so we're going to move pretty quickly and tell you a little bit about my story. And then we're going to use our time to do some workshopping. What I want to do is subscribe to an oath of confidentiality that anything, any idea that you promote in this room can't be used by another person for his or her gain without permission. So if everybody can subscribe to that, just raise your hand and say, yeah, I'll do my best. The first question that really needs to be answered if you're thinking about developing an app is, are users going to buy it? Or am I going to use advertising to pay for the app? And then the last question is, if none of those work, am I going to become part of the surveillance economy, which is what Google and Facebook are really offering their customers. Now they have users, but their customers are paying for the information that they're able to generate. And the latest term that I heard, and this was on a radio interview not too long ago, was the guy called it the surveillance economy. Because they're watching what we're doing, and they're making money off it. And I'll give you just a very quick example in one market. So in the auto dealership market, when somebody goes to a website like cars.com or expresses some interest in a product, whether it's a Ford or a Mini or a BMW, it's entirely possible that the automaker will have spent $700 on that lead before he or she ever gets to the dealership. And that's all because of internet workings. We have no idea. So one question you got to ask is, how are you going to sell your app? What's the intent here? A little bit of my story is that I was going through a divorce and I came across a novel way of dividing up our stuff, and I decided I would make lemonade out of those lemons and turn it into an app. It was very naive, and if you're going to develop an app, there's some naivete that really is required. Because there's how many apps in the iTunes store now? 600, 700,000, and you know, a lot of them, like I showed you, are just sitting on the shelf. The other app that we developed, Kids Self-Evaluate, actually Eric was supposed to be here today, the kid who ended up doing the program. That was sort of just a lark, and it came out of some consulting work that a bunch of pro bono nonprofit consultants did back in 2009. And it was essentially a psychometric, a test of psychological stuff. And it was, I developed it because I had a kid in front of me who could pull it off. 17-year-old kid, and I was going to spend maybe $3,000 on him as a lark. And so sometimes you develop apps for not very good reasons. That's part of my story. I tried to create a tech startup that was a function of creating socially beneficial applications. But I never got to the point of getting investors, so that's part of my story. So first thing I want to talk about is design and concept. First thing we've got to do is we've got to find out what our market is. And I'll tell you, I didn't do that very well. And I still pay for it. I'm still glad I have the apps, but I still pay for it. You have to come up with some answers to the question about how you're going to communicate this app. How are you going to, in the design process, how are you going to show other people what your idea is? You know, this morning I went for a run in Howard Park in Santa Rosa, close to where I live, and I have this app called Map My Run. And after I get to a mile, I turn it on and tell it to start recording, and it does its GPS thing, and after a mile it says, you've done a mile in 13 minutes, congratulations, you just completed your first mile. And then they'll have some advertising that follows on in an audio format. You know, these things have changed our lives. I'm just glad to have the recording of the workout. You know, I can go to the website and I can see what I did on December 4th, and my endorphins will go up because I feel good about it, you know. The other question that needs to be answered is about prototyping and how you do your mock-ups. Another option is flow charting and mind mapping. So I'm just going to talk about those really briefly. So one of the products that you can use for flow charting is called Graphio. It's iOS based, it's Android based, it's also web based. So this is just a way of communicating and laying out what it is you want the app to do. So I press this button and you go to this screen, and you go to this screen and you input your birth date, and you input your birth date, and then you go to the what would be a sample in our app. You go to an evaluation screen where you can take a bunch of evaluations. So that's one option we can talk about in greater detail later. Another option is mind mapping, and this is actually a clip from what we did with our divorce app. So we use this to define all of our assets and debts that were going to appear on the screen. And this is a way of communicating to the programmer what needed to appear on the screen. So again, what I'm focusing on and harping on is the value of communication, because it clarifies and makes more accurate the communication between you and the programmers and you and the testers, so that you get the app in a form that is more accessible to the user, and it's also cheaper to develop. Because what will happen is, if we don't do this well at the start, what will happen is you'll end up with programmers, and you will find that your scope of work that they quoted for is different than the work you really want done. And you're going to end up paying more money. That's what we're trying to avoid here. don't pay more money, and in some cases don't develop the app if you can't find the market for it, or if you can't find the market for it, then you know what your risks are. In my particular case, the app I developed, the first app I developed was for divorcing couples, and it's only about 3 years ahead of its time. Because the law has not caught up to what the app can do. So we're starting to see more what's called collaborative law in the divorce market. So it's less adversarial and more mediation oriented, and also more wraparound services. So they're starting to provide, this is the education that you get by developing an app. There are lawyers that are starting to provide emotional and financial support. So they're getting therapists and they're getting certified financial planners involved, as well as the legal issues. So they're starting to provide a much more holistic, comprehensive approach to the process. And my app is probably a couple of years ahead. Yeah,
They're partnering with those other services? Is that how they're supplying those services?
Yes.
Lawyers?
Yeah.
And your app's based on a mediation concept too?
It's based on a non-acrimonious situation. It's based on a collaborative situation. But the app does provide the ability for users, whether it's a lawyer, wife, husband, provides the ability for them to send these, what we call configurations or scenarios around, and tweak them, send them back, create a new one, make a copy, whatever. And I can show you what that app looks like when we finish with the presentation. It's pretty robust. People call it Visual Excel. But I can't make a living off it, even at $10 a copy for the pro version. And I'll throw out all kinds of things today for you, because that's part of the education you're going to get. But Apple keeps 30% of the app price. So for a $10 app, I get $7. KinoSophia. This is a very interesting set of templates. And what you can do with KinoSophia is you can actually provide the ability for testers to press buttons and have it go to screens. And this will work in Keynote in the Apple world. It will also work in PowerPoint in the Microsoft world. So, and they've gotten much more reasonable in terms of the prices. So you actually see that they're giving you iPad prototyping templates for $49. Used to be like $150, $200. They've also got Windows Phone templates. And what you can do with this is you actually program the button. All you're doing is programming a button to, let's say, go to another slide. But when you're in the play mode in that presentation software, it looks like it's an app. So you haven't done any programming per se, no iOS, no Android programming, but it looks like the app is working.
So are you suggesting people use this to make apps?
This is probably one of the better programs out there. There's another one called Fluid UI, which is mock-ups, and they do similar things. You can use templates with their software. I haven't used their stuff. I've used KinoSophia's. And all of this can be obviated if you decide to go the simple route, which is templates. So there are companies that have templates for mobile apps for all kinds of business applications. Here's two I've given you. One is a restaurant menu, second is an auto loan calculator. And what they provide the ability for you to do is, in the restaurant case, they provide the ability for you to upload your menu. So you put your menu on there, and they put your logo on the mobile app. They take care of dealing with iTunes and iTunes Connect, which is a world unto its own. Android is supposedly better. Microsoft is supposedly terrible. but Apple is very strict about their submission requirements, so you really have to know what you're doing in order to submit the app to Apple. So in these cases, restaurant menu, auto loan calculator, hair salon, they'll put your logo on the mobile app, they'll oversee submitting it, getting it approved, and providing support
For $799?
for $799. So all of the prototyping and other things can go away. You just buy the template, you follow what they've got, and you can go that direction. So one of the questions in the market world is, who are they? Why would they want to buy your app? How would you get to them, and how much is that going to cost? And what's the potential return and when? So in my particular case with the divorce app, I Split Divorce it's called, with the divorce app, my best way of getting to my potential customer is to pay Google $3 a click. The word divorce is $3 per click. So the people who are going to pay for that are the people who are selling something more than $5 worth. Because even if they click on that, how many are going to end up buying? So the people who are paying $3 a click are whom? Law firms, right? And they're segmenting the market either by zip code or by age or by income, and all of that can be done with all of your Google advertising. So who are they? Why would they want to buy the app? How are you going to get to them, and what's your potential return? That market analysis has to be done even for yourself, even if you're going to do it for yourself. Especially if you're thinking about getting investors involved and you've got an app that may be very complicated, you absolutely have to go through this exercise. The next time, if you want to come here, we're going to talk about different ways of choosing the app technology. So one way to go on an app is what's called native. So the entire app sits on a device. Any questions about that? Another way to go on an app is what's called web-based. And you can pretty much put web and responsive web design together. Anybody heard of responsive web design? So responsive web design, what do you know about responsive web design, Kurt?
It's when the website is built in a way that it knows which device it's being viewed on, and so it presents the right style sheet so that it looks right on the phone. It's a different layout for phone versus web or tablet.
Right. So it actually has some intelligence built in based on the size of the screen, and it will modify the menus, it will modify the menu choices, because obviously on a desktop you can have a lot more menu choices than you can on this guy. So a couple ways to go is native, and that's the simplest, web-based, and includes responsive web design, and you can create bookmarks that are icons on your phone. Looks just like an app, but it takes you to a website. And the third way is a hybrid, where part of the app sits on the device and part of the app communicates with a host or a server. And the reason you would do that is because you're working with some huge database or something, or you need to get access. So, for example, Amazon's mobile app is a hybrid. So it's part on the device and part you're going out to their website. We'll also talk about preparing to become an app developer and promoter in the various marketplaces. And for if there's any question, I'll dissuade you of any idea that you can create an iOS app and also create an Android app by some gimmickry. These all need to be built from the ground up. There is no compatibility among the apps, no compatibility among these different operating systems, mobile operating systems. So you pretty much have to start from scratch on each one. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out right now. O'Reilly's pushing it a lot, using JavaScript, HTML5, and web design techniques, and then converting those to iOS. They're ultimately one thing is built, one set of interfaces built that is essentially the app, and then there are tools to convert them into iOS, convert them into Android. Because I've been curious about that of late, and it's something that O'Reilly's doing a lot of webinars on.
I'll have to check in on that. My guess is they're building the application on the web first,
Right.
and then they're creating some unique interfaces. We'll also talk about preparing a business plan if you're going to, even just a one-pager, and then how to find some bona fide programmers, either domestically or overseas.